The Mopar abbreviation is mostly associated with Dodge muscle cars, but the name was actually first used in the 1920s as an official name for Chrysler's antifreeze. The name has since stuck and refers to all the company's high-performance models. This inevitably includes some of the most legendary muscle cars. So let's look at the 15 rarest Mopar models ever made. 1970 Plymouth Hemi Superbird. Heralding the era of Chrysler's aero-bodied cars, the Plymouth Superbird was a NASCAR homologation special meant to beat the Ford Torino Talladega around the oval. The Superbird shared the B-body platform with its more civil-looking sibling, the Roadrunner, and other mid-size Chrysler models. Almost all Superbirds came with a 440 Super Commando V8. Only 135 customers opted for the 426 Hemi engine, which allowed the race version of the winged Plymouth to reach speeds of 200 miles per hour, making it one of the fastest muscle cars of the 1970s while prompting safety concerns in motorsports. Thanks to the cone nose, the Plymouth Superbird also boasted a drag coefficient of just 0.28, which helped it reach supercar speeds. 1969 Plymouth Barracuda Formula S convertible. The Formula S packed on the 1969 Plymouth Barracuda added plenty of features, most notably a 383 V8, aptly named the Super Commando. It featured a forged steel crankshaft, cast aluminum pistons, and a windage tray that reduced parasitic power loss. Plymouth also fitted HD shocks and suspension to improve the Barracuda's handling. Chrome-tipped dual exhausts poked out of the rear, and the red streak tires wrapped around the Formula S's wheels. Emblems on the fiberglass front fenders and a Formula S badge on the rear fascia of the car advertised to everyone interested that it was no ordinary Barracuda. Few people ordered the Barracuda with the Formula S package. Even fewer rolled off the assembly line featuring a 4-speed manual and a ragtop. 1969 Dodge Charger Daytona 426 Hemi. The Dodge Charger Daytona was the first aero-body Mopar, but despite being produced for 2 years, unlike the 1970 only Superbird, it was produced in fewer numbers, 503 to be exact. Like the Superbird, this winged warrior was fitted with either a 440 or a 426 Hemi. Only 70 cars got the Hemi V8 engine, making them extremely valuable. According to Classic.com, even non-Hemi examples are well into the six-figure territory nowadays, while a pristine Hemi example can easily fetch over $1 million. Performance-wise, what goes for the Plymouth Superbird is also true for the Charger Daytona. The cone nose and big wing allow the car to cut through the air with a drag coefficient of 0.28, like the Superbird, making it one of the fastest classic Mopars ever made. 1968 Dodge Charger 500. Before Chrysler introduced the Winged Warriors, they came up with another NASCAR homologation model. The Charger 500 was aerodynamically optimized, hence the indented front grille, recessed rear window, and front chin spoiler. The Charger 500 was meant to compete with the Ford Torino Talladega and Mercury Cyclone spoiler in the stock class. It didn't do well, but that didn't stop the Charger 500 from selling. Out of the 500 planned units, 392 were sold. In 1968, the base Charger 500, equipped with a 440 V8, would set you back $3,843. The 426 Hemi was a $648 option. Of those, 67 came with the 426 Hemi, only 27 with the 4-speed manual. 1971 Dodge Charger RT. The Dodge Charger RT was a hefty car weighing around 4,000 pounds. Nevertheless, propelled by the mighty Hemi V8 under its hood, it hit 60 miles per hour in under 7 seconds and cleared the quarter mile in a little over 14 seconds. Though the Charger RT shared the B-body chassis with cars like the Plymouth Roadrunner, it was shorter and wider than its stablemates, which improved agility and stability. Dodge also tuned the chassis and suspension to give drivers more confidence when cornering. Therefore, the nimble Dodge Charger RT stood out at a time when muscle cars were more focused on straight-line performance. The Charger's unique pop-up hood scoop was an ingenious method of delivering air to the engine. It was the only aerodynamic innovation from the 1970 half concept that made it to the production model. 1967 Dodge Coronet W023. During the 1960s, the Big American 3 produced several high-performance muscle cars with drag racing in mind. The Coronet started out as a full-size model in 1949, but later trickled down to the mid-size segment. This meant it was riding on the B-body platform, the same as the Dodge Charger and Plymouth Roadrunner. The Coronet W023 turned the big cruiser into a no-nonsense drag strip slayer. All non-essential tech was removed to save weight. This included the heater, sound deadening, and even the carpets, which were replaced by rubber floor mats. Even the wipers were removed. The result is a curb weight of 3,451 pounds, which wasn't bad for a big car like the Coronet. Out of the 55 Coronet W023s made, 39 came with a 727 Torque Flight automatic. 1967 Plymouth Belvedere 2 R023. The Belvedere was, essentially, Plymouth's version of the Dodge Coronet. This strive to dominate NHRA superstock racing was strong in the Chrysler Corporation, which is why Plymouth brought out its high-performance B-body dedicated to drag racing. Like other track-dedicated Mopar models, the Belvedere 2 R023 was a stripped-down variant of the regular car with no amenities. If it makes the car heavier and doesn't aid performance, it goes out. This included the radio, sound deadening, and even the hubcaps. This resulted in the big muscle car weighing just 3,051 pounds. The Hemi engine featured heavy-duty internals, while a 4x88x1 sure-grip rear end made sure the engine stayed in the sweet spot. Only 17 of the R023 Belvederes came with a 4-speed A833 transmission. 1968 Plymouth Barracuda B029 Superstock. Back in 1968, the Plymouth Barracuda B029 Superstock was what the Dodge SRT Demon 170 is today. This classic Mopar, based on the second-generation Barracuda, utilized the smaller A-body platform compared to the bigger B-body Mopar muscle cars. Chrysler built the B023 Superstock with help from Hearst Performance. Compared to the regular Barracuda, the Superstock received a redesigned chassis, lighter body, heavy-duty rear suspension, and modifications to the Hemi V8. Other modifications include the fiberglass fenders and acid-etched steel doors. All the modifications resulted in the Barracuda B023 Superstock blasting down the quarter mile in as little as 10 seconds. Most specialized outlets talk about 50 units being produced, but some sources indicate as many as 70 cars may have been built. 1971 Plymouth Hemi GTX. By 1971, the writing was on the wall. Smog-era muscle cars were around the corner and would be some of the worst. However, Hemi-powered models like the Plymouth GTX were still going strong without losing any power. Still based on the Chrysler B-body, the 71 GTX was as elegant as ever, with its streamlined body and loop bumper grille. Despite being marketed as a gentleman's muscle car, the GTX still looked menacing and went like hell thanks to the well-known 426 Street Hemi, which at that point was still conservatively rated. The bigger but low-revving 440 V8 was still around as a base option, and most of the 2,942 cars produced came with it since the Hemi was an expensive option at $884. 1971 Plymouth Roadrunner. There was nothing fancy about the Plymouth Roadrunner. Early examples had a Spartan interior, which featured a bench seat and sometimes lacked carpets. Furthermore, Plymouth limited the number of optional extras for the Roadrunner. It did all this to keep the price down. Though simple, the Roadrunner was fast, especially when equipped with the Hemi engine. The 1971 model year Roadrunner received a more rounded outer shell, which significantly improved the car's looks and aerodynamics. Racing legend Richard Petty won the 1971 Daytona 500 and 21 more races in 1971 in a race-spec Roadrunner. Only 28 71 Roadrunners left the factory with a Hemi V8 and a 4-speed manual, making them some of the rarest Mopars ever made. 1968 Dodge Super Bee 426 Hemi. The Super Bee name comes from the B-body platform, which the model shared with the Charger, Coronet, Roadrunner, and other mid-size Mopars. The Super Bee was, essentially, a boldly styled muscle car based on the Coronet and inspired by the Roadrunner's catchy graphics. That said, the Super Bee scored enough visual differences to set it apart. To no surprise, motivation came from the 426 Street Hemi V8. However, the Super Bee was 65 pounds heavier and sat on a wheelbase 1 inch longer than the Roadrunner. The Dodge Charger inspired the no-nonsense interior, and it came standard with a bench seat. As far as parts bin specials go, this Mopar is one of the greatest. 1970 Plymouth Hemi Cuda Convertible. There are few cars defined by their engine, but none more so than the 1970 Plymouth Hemi Cuda. The fact that the Hemi-powered cars were dubbed Hemi Cuda instead of Barracuda speaks for itself. The 2-year model was popular, but that mostly goes for the hardtop, which outsold the convertible by a hefty margin. In 1970, just 5.1% of all Cudas were convertibles. That number dropped to less than 2% in 1971. Fewer still came with a Hemi V8. Out of the 2,793 Cuda convertibles, just 21 were Hemi-powered. Of those, 14 were produced in 1970 and 7 in 1971, making them one of the rarest, most collectible Mopars. 5 of the Hemi convertibles are said to be exported to other countries. One of the 71 Hemi Cuda convertibles was auctioned in 2021, where it reached $4.8 million, which still wasn't enough for the owner to let go. 1969 Dodge Coronet RT Convertible. Riding high on the success of the 1968 Dodge Coronet, the automaker redesigned the 1969 model. The 1969 Coronet featured a front fascia with flared outer ends, a modified hood with 2 fiberglass scoops on the Hemi variant, and a revised rear fascia. Dodge also extended the rear leaf springs and added beefier front torsion bars. The Hemi engine and the convertible top options were expensive, which partly explains why Dodge sold only 10 1969 Coronet RT convertibles. Another reason why people avoided Mopar convertibles was because the modifications added weight to the car. Furthermore, some drop tops failed to regain the rigidity they lost when automakers hacked their roofs off, compromising the vehicle's stability. People chose fixed roof examples because they were cheaper and faster. The few who chose convertibles and maintained them properly are reaping the rewards right now, as cars like the 1969 Dodge Coronet RT convertible are very valuable. 1970 Dodge Challenger RT Convertible. This gorgeous 1970 Dodge Challenger RT featured a twin-scooped hood, a chrome gas cap, and RT badges all over the outer shell. Options included a rear spoiler, a luggage rack, and hood tie-down pins. The body hid rear leaf springs, a front torsion bar suspension system, and a standard front anti-roll bar. The rear anti-roll bar and power front disc brakes were optional. The Challenger RT further distinguished itself from other Chrysler offerings with its luxurious interior, which featured tall bucket seats, an electric clock, and faux wood grain trim. The list of interior options was endless, including cruise control, different radios, leather upholstery, and more. Dodge only built 9 1970 Dodge Challenger RTs, 5 of which featured a 4-speed stick shift. 1966 Dodge Coronet Hemi 4-door. When the Dodge Charger grew 2 more doors, Mopar fans were not thrilled about it. Eventually, they warmed up to the practical muscle car, but you probably didn't know that something similar happened in the 1960s. The fabled 426 Hemi V8 came out in 1964, with a street version becoming available in 1966. One of the first cars to feature the street Hemi, besides the Dodge Charger, was the Dodge Coronet sedan. By doing so, Dodge created one of the first American sleeper cars. Like most 426 Hemi-powered muscle cars, the Coronet sedan lacked amenities like AC. The Hemi-powered Coronet sedans are also made without power steering and power brakes. Information is relatively scarce, but apparently, all Coronet Hemi sedans featured a TorqueFlite automatic with 3.23 rear gears. 2 were said to be exported, while 2 were reportedly commissioned by the FBI, leaving just 1 civilian car in the US.